Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, you know that I'm fascinated and committed to introducing you to people who can expand your mind, your brain, that can help you heal internally and externally, that can help you 360 degrees take care of your life. And today's guest is someone who is the first guest whoever has been on the podcast twice, and now the first guest who's ever been on the podcast 3 times, which shows us how much you all love him and how much I really appreciate all his insights and guidance as well. He's my go-to person whenever I hear about a new treatment or a new therapy or a new whatever it may be. I'm texting this person saying, hey, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about this? And I really appreciate how he lives an extremely holistic life from a spiritual point of view, from a scientific point of view, and having someone that I can ask these questions to openly helps me. So I hope today helps you. I'm speaking about the one and only Dr. Daniel Amen. Dr. Amen's mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. Dr. Amen is a physician, adult and child psychiatrist, and founder of the Amen Clinics with 10 locations across the US. Amen Clinics has the world's largest database of brain scans for psychiatry, totaling more than 200,000 SPECT scans on patients from 155 countries. He's also the founder of Brain MD, a fast-growing science-based company, and Amen University, which has trained thousands of medical and mental health professionals on the methods he has developed. Dr. Amen is not new to books or TV. He's produced over 16 national public television shows about the brain, and his online videos on brain and mental health have been viewed over 300 million times. And Dr. Amen is a 12-time New York Times bestselling author. I've got a long way to catch up. And today we're talking about his latest book. It's called You Happier: The 7 Neuroscience Secrets of Feeling Good Based on Your Brain Type. This is the book I want you to go and get. The link is in the caption right now. Dr. Daniel Amen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for allowing me to have you in my pocket at all times, to be able to text you and ask you weird and wonderful questions. And most of all, thank you for being just, such a kind, warm-hearted person who always brings their best energy to serve others. So thank you for being here.
Well, it makes me happy to be with you. I think of happiness as a daily practice, and appreciating the people you love is just critical to it.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you. You said you were happy to be here when we were just filming a couple of seconds ago, and then you were telling me that I looked good, and I was saying to you, it's because I've been doing all the right things and following your advice. And I remember, I think it was our second interview, not our first one. Our second interview, I was saying to you, like, I have only one cheat day a week now. And you just looked at me and you were like, well, you know why they call it a cheat day, right? And I didn't. I was like, what do you mean? And you were like, yeah, because you're cheating your brain. Like, and you gave this beautiful explanation. And I was thinking, you always have these things that you say that stick with me. And if anyone doesn't follow Dr. Daniel Amen on Instagram, make sure you go and follow him, because I love how you post the brain scans of befores and afters of on a certain drug and without a certain drug, on weed, without weed. Like, I just think that the way you communicate brain health is fantastic and so great for, my generation, the generation after me. I think we have so much to learn from you. So thank you for what you're doing and how you're doing it too. And always makes me happy to see you and your wife as well. And this has probably been the longest I haven't seen you since you scanned my brain. So
which was so much fun.
That was so much fun. And I was very relieved to know that my brain was doing all right. So,
well, and when you see it, you develop a relationship with it, and you want it to be better. And it's hard to hurt it once you see it.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's crazy to me that we don't get exposed to our brains. Like, you don't ever see your brain, which we use every day, that works for us every day, and you have no access to it apart from see your body, you see, different organs maybe sometimes, but the brain's not talked about a lot. What is our brain? What does it do? And how do we develop a relationship with it? Because I feel that people are very confused with what is the brain, what is the mind, what does it do, what does it not do? I think there's a lot of stuff out there. How would you describe it?
Well, it's very clear to me after all the scans I've done that your brain, the physical functioning of your brain, the moment by moment physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And if your brain's not right, your mind's not right. And there are a lot of spiritual teachers that'll separate the mind from the brain, but you can't, because just think of Alzheimer's disease, very damaged brains, and they're very damaged minds that go, people that act in ways they'd never act if their brain was healthy, that they don't remember people that they're deeply in love with. And so if we want a healthy mind, it actually starts with a healthy brain. And, I've had the blessing or the curse to scan over 1,000 convicted felons and over 100 murderers, and their brains are very damaged. So if your behavior is so bad, you end up in a cage. And they're not thinking, I have to understand, evaluate, rehabilitate that person's brain, and then they act better. And that helps all of us. Dostoevsky once said, you can tell about the soul of a society, not by how it treats its outstanding citizens, but by how it treats its criminals. And it's, when I first started scanning people, I didn't really have an opinion on the death penalty. I just really hadn't thought about it. I thought of free will as black or white. You have it or you don't. And then as my work became known, defense attorneys would send me people who did really bad things, and their brains were so damaged. And when I would go to court, and a lot of people hated me for that, if you have a bad brain and you did something terrible, you don't get to go home. But should you kill them? It's a really important question. And I'm like, no, it's not the sign of an evolved society to kill sick people. You have to protect society from them. But what I've seen is if we rehabilitate their brain, they can have a meaningful life. And people just aren't connecting. It's your brain. It's easy to call people bad. It's harder to go, why? And, can I fix it?
What are the things that damage our brains? Because I think what we find is we often think like, that person was totally normal, and then one day they just changed. Or we say things like, if you just met them, like they were just quiet and calm, like you would never have noticed anything, and then they did this horrific thing. Like, what are those habits? What are those patterns that start damaging our brain? Because I don't think we're aware. As you said, we never see our brain. We don't really talk about it. We don't really know much about it. What are the things we do since birth that damage our brains that could lead to something as extreme as that?
Well, even before birth.
Yes.
So since marijuana has been legalized in many states, babies born with marijuana in their bodies has gone up 1,700%. It's a ridiculous amount. So even before you're born, what happens in utero can damage the trajectory of your life. They have more behavior problems. They have more attention problems. They have less empathy for other people. And then, as you go through life, the standard American diet is damaging brains. You talked about how healthy your diet has been. I follow this guy on TikTok. For some reason, my TikToks has gone crazy. And he looked at his blood sugar before and after Pop-Tarts. And Pop-Tarts was like the worst thing he looked at, almost worse than Coca-Cola. Wow. But what are we feeding children? In public school free lunches, Pop-Tarts, which means we're damaging their blood sugar levels, we're damaging their weight, and we're damaging their brain. And I have a mnemonic called Bright Minds, which helps me remember, like B is for blood flow, low blood flow, number one brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease. So Netflix, right? Not in front of the TV too often, not exercising, that damages your brain. Probably the number one thing that causes brain trouble. Your brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter. Your skull is really hard and has sharp, bony ridges. Mild traumatic brain injuries ruin people's lives. If you said, hey, Daniel, single most important thing from 210,000 scans, mild traumatic brain injuries. Don't let your kids. Physical, right? From snowboarding, falling off a horse, football, soccer, hockey.
Physical abuse too, I guess. Domestic violence.
Physical abuse will do it. Falls, car accidents, and people are texting and driving and texting and walking. And there's 3 million new concussions every year in the United States, which means over the last 30 years, there have been 90 million people that have had concussions. It's very common and a common cause of depression, homelessness, addiction, suicide, panic attacks, ADHD.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, when you spell it out that clearly, I think what I love about you is, I think the 2 times I have done an interview with you, and then when I was with you, I just go away going, I need to do something for my brain. I need to figure it out, right? And it's a good thing. Like, I enjoyed that healthy sense of an awakening and a healthy sense of fear, because I think we are so scared of being scared in society today. Like, we don't want to listen to the truth because it's scary, it's inconvenient, it forces us to change something. If someone could do something starting tomorrow, what is the thing that someone could do waking up tomorrow that could be better for their brain? What would you say that is?
Well, in You Happier, I talk a lot about the tiny habits, the smallest things that'll make the biggest difference. And brain and mental health, it's a daily practice. Just like physical health, right? As I said, you look really great. That's a daily practice, right? You just don't do that one day a week. You do it every day. If you want a really great brain and a really great mind, they're habits every day. And some of my favorite every day, is this good for my brain or bad for it? I just, like, when my daughter, she turned 19 yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday to her.
And when she was little, we played Chloe's game. And Chloe's game was, is this good for your brain or bad for it? Frozen blueberries. Oh, 2 thumbs up. God's candy. Or avocados. Oh, 2 thumbs up. God's butter. Hitting your head with a soccer ball. No, very stupid. Thumbs down. Right? And so just playing with her with that question that takes 3 seconds, right? I mean, this doesn't take long. And people go, what's good and what's bad? Second graders know it. I went into her second grade class, put 20 things on the board, and I went, separate them for me. And they got 19 out of 20 right. So they got a 95%. And the only thing they got wrong was orange juice, which they put in the good category, which is like way too much sugar.
Yes.
And so whenever you unwrap sugar from its fiber source, right, turn fruit into juice, it turns toxic in your body. So you have to be really careful with that. So that's 1. 2, whenever you wake up in the morning, today is going to be a great day. You have to nudge your brain, right? We have a conscious mind, we have an unconscious mind, we have a self-image, and your subconscious is paying attention to the words that the conscious mind is saying. And so if you're like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed, today is going to be a bad day, you're going to have a bad day because you just programmed your subconscious mind to do that. Every day when my feet hit the floor, today is going to be a great day. And then my favorite of all of them is when you go to bed at night. And bed is so important because if you want to have a good day, it starts the night before, is what went well today. So when I go to bed, I say a prayer and then I go, what went well? And I go on a treasure hunt because I'm purposefully looking for what are the right things that happen. And I look for the micro moments, like what's the smallest thing? And for me, where I live, I see a lot of hummingbirds and butterflies. And I just focus on them. And I've been doing this for years, and it's so helpful. And about 2.5 years ago, my dad died, and it was an awful, awful day. And when I went to bed that night, I said a prayer, and then went, what went well today? And then the voice in my head, started criticizing me, like you're a bad kid and you don't love your dad and whatever. But because it's my habit, I went, what went well today? And I saw this interaction between my mother and the police officer. And it was so funny and so beautiful that it just made me smile. And then I thought of all the texts I got from my friends who found out about my dad, and that was peaceful. And then I just thought about holding his hand before they took him away. And I went to sleep because I'm mastering my mind and not being a victim of the situation. It didn't mean I didn't grieve. I still grieve. I still miss him. But it's these habits, like every day, to direct my mind, to help me while taking care of my brain.
Yeah, I love those practical tools because in effect, what we're trying to do is change our thought pattern, right? We have a pattern, as you said, to wake up and say, I'm tired. And we put it on snooze, and then we get up, and then we're having breakfast, and we're like, I'm still tired. And then we get to lunchtime, and we're like looking at the clock, and we're like, I'm still tired. And then by the end of the night, I'm still tired, but then we're up at midnight watching Netflix or whatever it may be, saying, I'm still tired. And then that becomes our reality, that we just continue to feed that fatigue, and we're just more and more and more tired. Whereas when you nudge your brain in a different direction, as you said, and you said, today's going to be a great day, you now start making great choices because you want it to be a great day. But what I love about what you've defined, and this is different and I appreciate it, is that you don't talk about positive thinking, you talk about accurate thinking as being a healthier way to live. And I really like that clarification because I think the positive thinking approach can also be quite toxic. Like you just said about your father, it's not that you didn't feel grief, it's not that you don't miss him. Like, of course, those are very real human emotions, but you know how to direct them. Can you clarify for our audience today, what is the difference between accurate thinking and positive thinking?
Well, positive thinking is I can have this third beer and it won't negatively impact me. Or I can drive at 125 miles down the freeway in the rain and it won't hurt me. Positive thinking is I can stay up and be on my phone until 2 a.m. and it won't have a negative impact. They did this great study out of Stanford. Lewis Terman, 1921, evaluated 1,453 10-year-old children, and then they followed them for 90 years, looking at what goes with success, health, and longevity. And the don't worry, be happy people, actually in the beginning of the book, I talk about the lies of happiness. And this is one of the lies, don't worry, be happy. They died the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses. I have an older brother and I adore him, but he's like 150 pounds overweight. I always sort of wanted to be like him because I'm intense and I work hard and I've always got projects, and he's like off at 3:00 playing golf, and he just seemed to not have a care in the world. But my health is so much better than his because I worry about it. And so you want to have the right dose of anxiety. People with low levels of anxiety go to jail because they don't think, oh, if I do this bad thing could happen. But obviously too much makes you suffer. And I love the verse in the New Testament, John 8:32, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I want to live my life in truth. So I want to tell myself always, so what's the truth? So if I think Tana never listens to me, I'm like, well, is that true? Right? It's another little habit, right? To always carry around those 3 words. I don't have any tattoos, but if I did, is it true would be one of the tattoos, because I don't want to believe everything I think. And that's very important. Your mind creates trouble. Thoughts, they come from all sorts of places. They come from your ancestors. They're actually written into your genetic code. I don't know if you ever read the book, It Didn't Start With You.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's a great book.
Amazing. I love that book. And trauma and successes actually get written in our genetic code. And our thoughts come from the voices of our moms, our dads, our siblings, our friends, foes, the news you listen to, which, by the way, is no longer the news anymore. Let's just be really clear. They bastardized that industry, and it's about tribalism and money, and it's not about news. I start every day with the Good News Network. It's just a cool app. I have no financial interest in it. I just love it. I'm always smiling, sending articles to my kids. And the music you listen to. I actually did a study on rap, country, rock, and classical music and heavy metal. We did a memory task with high school students, and heavy metal was the worst. Classical was the best. The second best was country, which shocked us.
Where did rap fall in the
right behind heavy metal.
Oh, wow. Because that's like one of the biggest forms of music today is rap and hip hop. So.
And music so influences how we feel. And so you want to be careful with the inputs, because you might not think they matter, but your subconscious mind's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I want to ask you. This is really interesting to me because so I've been listening to jazz in the car now. Jazz is my new, I usually don't listen to anything. I usually just talk to myself when I drive. That's been like my habit for years, is I see driving as a moment of spending more time with myself. So I generally drive to nothing. But when me and my wife are in the car together, we both like music. And recently we've been listening to jazz music together. But what I find really interesting about what you just said is that there's a difference between what feels good and what is good for you. So someone may say, I feel good when I eat junk food, when I listen to music that isn't good for my brain, and when I drink. But when I miss out on that meal, I don't feel good. When I choose classical music, I don't feel good. And when I choose to eat healthy and maybe don't drink as much, I don't feel good. And so what I'm fascinated by is our relationship with feeling a certain way versus being a certain way. So when I started to have to remove refined sugar from my diet, which my wife encouraged me to do, I didn't feel good about that. Like, that was painful. I didn't enjoy that feeling in my mind, right? Or when I started to go to the gym every day or hike, where I hike outside here every day now, and when I'm working out, I don't feel good about it, but it's good for me. So I started to discover that the things that are actually good for me don't always feel good. So how do you approach the idea of feeling a certain way? Because I feel like everything that I do that's good for me, I didn't feel good about when I started doing it. Now I choose it because now because
you're getting the benefit from
correct, the benefits. I'm also feeling the pattern shift. Now if I eat, so I still get a craving for junk food. I still have that craving sometimes. And maybe once a month now I'll be like, all right, I'm going to have a burger. Like I'm going to eat, like a burger and fries and whatever. And now I don't like the taste of it. Like after I feel really regretful, and I'm like, I didn't even like that. I need to remember that now I've changed my tastes. So now it's changed. So talk to me a bit about that. Like, why do we always want to feel happy and feel good, but we don't often make the right decisions?
Secret number 4 is love food that loves you back. And you're in a relationship. I want you to love what you eat, but I also want it to love you. And so if you're in love with alcohol, and alcohol is clearly toxic to your brain for so many reasons, brain and your body, then it's sort of like you're in an abusive relationship. And I just want people to think about, what do you really want? Do you want that mountain of fries or that swimming pool of alcohol? Or do you want energy? Do you want clarity? Do you want memory? Do you want vitality? Do you want creativity? And ultimately, what I want is I want to feel good, and I want to be good, and I want to do good. And that comes from a brain and body that work right. So I don't want to feel good now, but not later, right? That's a 4-year-old's mindset. I want to feel good now and later. So the things I do day in and day out, I love. Now, it takes a while sometimes to change your habits. The brain is lazy. It just wants to do what you've allowed it to do. So what you said is just so beautiful. It's like, well, I still get the cravings and I'll give in, and then I'll go, why did I do that?
Yeah, that's right? How I genuinely feel right now.
Because then I just don't feel awesome. So for that momentary pleasure, it's like, well, is it worth it? Does it fit? So another tattoo I'm going to get someday. Does it fit? So I recommend, this is actually part of Secret 7, live each day based on clearly defined values, purpose, and goals. And quite frankly, hedonism, it's not on my goal list. It's not in my value list. And hedonism, so giving in to every craving I have, is the enemy of happiness because it ends up wearing out your dopamine or pleasure centers in your brain. And I always talk about you want to drip dopamine. Don't dump it, because when you dump it with the fries and the alcohol, the porn, you don't have much left. And so then you have to go back and do it again. And all of a sudden, chemicals are controlling you rather than you are controlling you.
The dopamine gets so addictive. And as you said, with the pleasure centers, now we're having to, the same amount of what we had doesn't even fulfill the amount of pleasure. So we have to have more to hit the same amount of pleasure, as far as I understand. Is that correct? Like,
it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And fame wears out the pleasure centers in your brain.
Wow.
And I've been blessed. I mean, I'm friends with you, with
you work
Justin
with,
and Miley, and you know, we talk about this over and over again, how fame is just such a trap because, you know, once, you know, like I had a video go viral and it was like 40 million views. And I'm like, oh, it's so exciting. And so when the next one gets 8 million views, you're like, well, that sucked. And you realize just, you know, how stupid that is. You have to be very careful, and you want to drip dopamine.
How do you drip dopamine? How does someone do that? Let's say someone who's not getting 40 million views or 8 million views, but they're posting on social media, they're eating a burger, they're having that glass of, alcohol every night, whatever it may be. Like, how does someone learn to, I love that idea. I'm thinking, how does someone practically drip dopamine? Because that's really,
it's the micro moments of happiness. So for me, I mean, it's like holding Tana's hand and then, but noticing and feeling her skin and feeling the warmth, the softness. It's like being present, being connected, or seeing the hummingbird, watching the sunrise or the sunset, depending on where you live. It's being present, noticing what you like way more than what you don't like. Plus, sunlight drips dopamine. Pumpkin seeds drip dopamine. Omega-3 fatty acids. I just gave you a present of our vegan omega-3 because I know you're vegan and people have been wanting it for so long. But all the vegan omega-3s, they don't have EPA in them. So omega-3s, there's EPA and DHA. They're almost all DHA, but EPA is critical for mood, for focus, for circulation, and it's the first product on the market that I know of that is just loaded with the right balance of omega-3s.
And what is the difference between EPA and DHA?
They work on different systems in the body. Both of them are absolutely essential. And they're essential, which means you got to get them from an outside source. Your body doesn't make them. And people who are vegan, it's really hard to get healthy EPA and DHA levels from flax seeds and avocados, for example.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to start taking them. I'm really excited. What am I going to notice? What's going to be like?
Well, your skin's already good, but your skin, your hair, your nails, that's the things people notice.
Right.
But their mood is better. Brand new study out just today. Omega-3 fatty acids help decrease the incidence of depression. It also helps with focus and helps with memory. It's just critical because they make up the fats in 25% of nerve cell membranes in your brain. I mean, that's hugely important.
The reason why I find this so fascinating is I think so many of us are trying to solve a mental challenge when actually it's a physical brain tangible challenge, right? Like I'll meet a lot of people who are saying, I don't feel focused, I feel cloudy, I feel no energy, I feel lethargic. What do I do to get motivated? And it's like, well, no. The motivation's not the issue. It's like you're dealing with a lot of other stuff physically, tangibly, that could be solved. And then with good values, good purpose, good goals, you can actually go in the right direction. But just having a good set of goals and targets and values is not going to solve the fact that your body is crying out for attention. And I think I was definitely in that space for a long time in my life where I had such a strong mind that I didn't realize how much I was weakening my brain. And that actually, if I strengthened my brain, my mind was even stronger, my body was even better, and it was all interconnected. And so, for anyone who's listening to this, I want you to remember that if you've got an energy issue, a fatigue issue, a focus issue, like this is the podcast for you. Like this is what I want you to listen to, because chances are it's because you're missing out on some of this stuff. Like there's a part of your diet or something that's not going into your body.
Well, and if you think of it like hardware and software,
yes,
that setting goals, which is so important, and not believing every stupid thing you think, which we'll talk about, is so important. But those are software programs, and you got to have the hardware that will run it. Plus, I hate the term mental illness, and you and I have talked about that before. It's not mental, it's brain. And when you call someone mental, you shame them. When you call them a brain, you elevate them. So we need to change the discussion. And mental illness is in, right? Everybody's talking about their mental illness. but it's the wrong discussion. The discussion is about brain health. And yes, you have to program it. But what's happening in our society now, it's one of the reasons I wrote the book. We're the unhappiest we've been since the Great Depression. That depression tripled from February of 2020 to August of 2020. Unbelievable. Never seen anything like that. And children, suicide skyrocketed, depression, anxiety, drug abuse skyrocketed in children. And it's like the pharmaceutical industry is winning, that the incidence of antidepressants,